Welcome to part 10 of Rishi the Movie. Now, up on the screen now is an image with some words underneath it. And the words spell out Patton West's utter contempt for the courts, for the police, for the FBI, for state and federal governments. She believes that she's above all of these laws, and because of her occult knowledge, she can avoid getting prosecuted for her many crimes, including 3 decades of racketeering, thousands of acts of terrorism, at least 1,000 or more against me and my family, and of course 5 to 7 murders. Which she admits to, but still she's free. And still her gang that has kept her out of jail, with her lies of course, are still free. Now, the movie, which now has 10 parts, may seem to be a little all over the place, but the whole purpose of this is to spell out everything in great detail for the investigators, FBI, police, state governments, whoever, so that it becomes obvious from the amount of detail that there's a pattern, pun intended, of behaviour deserving of her investigation to be held under R.I.C.O statutes. My understanding with R.I.C.O is that the person to be subject to R.I.C.O statutes must have committed at least 2 of the qualifying crimes in the last 10 years. Well, Patton West, I think, has done about 8 of the qualifying crimes in the last 10 years. So there's no doubt that Patton West and her accomplices should be subject to a R.I.C.O investigation. And once the law enforcement authorities get their head around all of this, I'm sure they will proceed on that basis. I mean, they're going to have chapter and verse. All the dots are going to be joined. That's why I'm going into as much detail as I am. Another reason I'm going into so much detail is that I want to prove that Reynolds and Williams, at least, are also qualifying to be tried under R.I.C.O statutes. I mean, Reynolds must have committed at least 3 or 4 of the predicating crimes, and Williams at least 2. So we'll spell it all out and let the authorities do what they want with the information. Now let's get back to dissecting Patton West's statements while being deposed by my lawyer in October 2009. I want to prove that every time Patton West goes to court, she lies from start to finish. That's going to be obvious from the information I'm giving both here in respect to the deposition and Patton West's appearance in court on July 12th on behalf of her son, Chris Hayward, where she lied throughout the evidence she gave. From start to finish, it was a pack of lies. Now, it didn't work that time, even though the lies were accompanied by thousands of acts of terrorism probably directed at Jamie Hayward. However, those lies did work a few years earlier when, again, her son was in court trying to get custody of an infant female child from his first wife, Kendall. Again, Patton West lies from start to finish, and those lies were backed up with a lengthy campaign of terrorism against Kendall, which resulted in Kendall losing her daughter to Patton West's son. Dr. Cole's testimony, a member of Patton West's cult, on behalf of Patton West, also helped tip the balance. But again, this is a crime family. What do you expect? Let's get back to dissecting her statements in court in October 2009. On the screen now is big page 6. I'm going to start at little page 18, top left. Okay, and what was your monthly salary from them? The lawyer asked. And Patton West says, it was decided by a board of director vote. I believe it was either 110 or 120,000 a year. Again, another huge lie. Patton West is an autocrat. Patton West controls everybody's expressions, their movements around her compound. Nobody can make a decision without first agreeing with it in advance. So, but don't take my word for it. Let's listen to Patton West herself. You don't allow anyone to go off and do anything on their own. That you are the ultimate control freak.
Absolute control freak, John. Yeah. And I continue my affairs exactly along those lines.
And after we've done that, if you want to check out to see if any of her employees or students had discretion, just scroll through the list of statements from past employees and students, and you'll see that nobody had discretion. Patton West goes on, essentially it was my lecture circuit and teaching events that generated the vast majority of the foundation's money, and I estimated that I essentially bequeathed to the non-profit approximately 90% of my income on a regular basis, keeping approximately 10% of my monies for myself. Another massive lie. Patton West's income came from donations from the public and donations extracted from her employees and her students. She was not on any lecture circuit. What she did twice a year was to hold her own lectures, one of them being at her compound in Victor, and for instance in 2002, the other being in Montreal, which is where she viciously assaulted Beatrice Maguire and then denied it. Again, I want to emphasize that's her business manager for 6 months, and I closely monitored the money going in and out. Patton West was not on any lecture circuit. Therefore, her income came from defrauding the public by pretending to be a guru that could deliver enlightenment for hundreds of thousands of dollars. So there was that going on, that massive fraud. There was also robbery, theft, fraud, extortion from her employers and her students, and consultants like myself that came along. But the big money came from massive frauds, like the application for $30 million in grant money from the US government. I can guarantee that the application for that grant money was fraudulently applied for, and I've explained this previously, but long story short, Patton West does not run a corporation by the law, corporate law. Basically, she appoints members of her cult that are obedient, brainwashed and conditioned and do exactly what she says. And she runs the show as an individual, a crime boss. The application for that grant money was turned down. Other big hits come from defrauding people who come to her private sessions and intensive looking for help with their health issues. Again, I refer you to what Kathleen Francisco and Diane Stoner said in 2002 when she suddenly got $500,000 for doing something. I think it was supposedly curing somebody after she'd made them ill. That would be my guess. I don't know for sure. But that $500K came in and none of it went to the charity. She went off on a spending bench, as we've already said.
It has been said by some that although there appears not to be much money there, she always seems to pull a rabbit out of her hat at the last moment.
Yeah, she may have secret resources for her own finances.
On the last event, didn't she say she brought in $500,000?
Yes, at the last day of the last event, which was in July. I was hired on July 7th, so that it was 7 days after that the event happened. And she came in giggling and twirling and grabbed me and said, "I can't believe it. I just brought in $500,000."
Wow.
So I'm kind of wondering from the mid-July to the beginning of October where $500,000 has gone.
Wow.
Because I've seen the grocery bills. And nothing. But Devra's life has improved. She did take a trip to Israel, which was an extensive amount. She made large purchases there of jewelry, clothing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
her travel.
This money that came in from wherever, we don't know, it obviously came into her personally. And it sounds as though it's being used for her personal use.
Oh yes. She stated strictly, bluntly to me the day before she fired me that she demands beautiful things. That she will only live with beautiful things, and these people will provide her with these beautiful things.
And where are the IRS in all of this? Oh, I forgot. They were called in. John Nielsen came. He's a criminal investigator for the IRS. But before he turned up, she had her minion shred all the documents. Anyone still think this idiot's a guru?
Yep.
And you said something about shredding documents and files.
Yeah, they've recently purchased the shredder, and
They're going
Esther
through, they're preparing to leave. That's it. Makes sense. That's why they're trying to get all this money too for Shambhala, and they keep this
The
whole
illusion.
thing, the illusion going.
Ain't gonna happen.
And when times are a little fallow, her two wealthy senior cult members in the shape of Corin Coffin will hand over hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think she must have donated, in quotes, between $1 million and $2 million. Then we have the next idiot, Dr. Julio Williams, who is not only giving her $100,000 every now and again, as happened in March 2003, but pledged a further $2 million to fund her criminal activities, so that she could outspend her victims in court too. Letter up on the screen now from Rebecca West confirms that, top paragraph, in addition to extorting 1.3 million from Dr. Cole, Williams gave her $100,000, and Tamayo's son contacted Reynolds demanding that the monies his mother had donated be returned to her immediately. So no lecture circuit, just organised crime, just racketeering, terrorism, and those who get in the way because she feels she'll never be called to account because of her secret weapon, they're murdered. There have been 2 attempts on my life, and I'm now in the 19th year of a campaign of terrorism designed to intimidate me into going away silently, empty-handed. It's not going to happen. However, Patton West's lies give away more information than she intended, because what she's saying there is that she bequeathed 90% of her non-existent regular income to the charity. That explains one thing, which was her slipping invoices into the charity, monthly, yearly, I don't know the frequency of them, claiming she's loaning money or not charging for her expertise, and that's how she ended up stealing the property from the charity. And if you read some of the statements from employees, you'll see that they all thought their contributions were going to the charity. But Patton West had other ideas. Whilst that was the public understanding, in reality, she was setting up a system of fake invoices so that she could steal the property from the charity and put it in a trust for herself and her eldest son, which is exactly what she did. On the screen now are 2 emails from 2 students. The first up is Sherilyn, who, like all the other students' employees, was under the impression that their money was going into the charity to pay for the property, mortgage and associated bills for the benefit of the charity. And that's exactly what it appeared to be the case. However, behind the scenes, Patton West was piling up invoices for unpaid salary in the amounts of probably 100, 200,000 a year, something like that. Her long-term plan was to steal the property from the charity, and that's exactly what she did, and put it in a trust fund for herself and her son, Rob Meader, so as her creditors couldn't get to it when she became the subject of a sheriff's sale in 2008 to pay past victims of organised crime $2 million in court fines and interest. Next up is another, email from Judy Morris. Like Sherilyn, she was not under the impression that Devra was going to take the property. She thought it was all going into the charity, which it was, and I've explained what happened. But Judy goes on to say that European students and others were persuaded to mortgage their homes to give DU money, and in doing so put themselves in terrible debt. They were told by Patton West that if they gave, more would come back to them. God would love them more, whatever. Anybody still think that Patton West is a guru? A service to others entity? A world server? No, this is a career criminal with an unusual weapon that allows her to rob, defraud, extort, injure, coerce, intimidate, and if necessary, murder those who get in her way. Much more to come. So to be absolutely clear, there was no lecture service at all. There were 2 meetings a year. Both lasted 4 or 5 days. She may go off to Israel to top up her offshore bank accounts or have photographs taken in Gaza because it looks good on her resume, but no lecture circuit. Her income, as Roger Hill stated, was about $1 million a year in donations for her good causes, Save the World good causes, none of which ever came to fruition. It all went to fund her lifestyle. There was the odd $500K from victims she made ill, then had them pay for the cure. There's the occasional massive fraud, like the CPA loan fraud, which didn't go ahead, but it would have been 30 million. And as a couple of people around her have said, she was going to use at least 2 million of that to pay off her debts. Then there are donations from other members of her gang, principally Coffin and Williams, to keep her going between successfully pulling off crimes. Like I keep saying, you can tell when she's lying, her lips are moving. Okay, more lies coming up. Big page 6, little page 18 down the bottom or towards the bottom, where once again she blames the members of a cult that she handpicked, that she is a control freak over, which she admits to being a control freak over. She goes on to say, essentially it was my lecture circuit and teaching events that generated the vast majority of the foundation's money. We've already dealt with that. That's a total lie. She wasn't on a lecture circuit. basically most of her money came from the charity, either in the form of cash donations or what she extracted from her victims, employees and students. And of course, the odd 500k she got in for extorting money from victims. She goes on to say, however, they weren't very good managers, made enormous well-intended proposals, infinite promises and claims which they did not follow through on. Response to her comment, however, they weren't very good managers. They weren't managers at all. They were brainwashed and conditioned members of a cult that followed her instructions to the letter. As we've heard previously on a number of occasions, this woman is a total autocrat. But the big point I want to make here is the lie about them not being very good at their jobs. While in court on July 12th, 2007, Patton West basically gave the same excuses about the Circle of Divine Unity. Counsel asked, so what is the Circle of Divine Unity? What did it do? What was its purpose? And Patton West says, well, they were supposed to have sponsored the work, which I'm sorry to say did not do a great job of it. Okay, you were director of that organization? I served on their board of directors for some period of time, I think 5 years or so. Lies, lies, lies. She was totally in control of what was happening there, and everybody carried out her instructions to the letter. The directors, employees had zero discretion. So this mess is entirely Patton West's mess, but as we've seen, you know when she's lying, her lips are moving. Lawyer says, did you ever file any sort of claim against them? Patton West says, I threatened a lawsuit to them. I wrote them accordingly that if they did not start doing something about the mess they had created. However, before moving on, I want to go back to the comments you made in little page 18. However, they weren't very good managers, made enormous well-intended proposals and infinite promises and claims which they did not follow through on. That is Patton West presenting her crimes onto her victims. Patton West was the one that came up with all of these well-intended, enormous proposals, and it was Patton West who made infinite promises. Take myself, for instance, and I'm probably one of maybe 10 or 12 consultants she's tried to do the same thing to over the years. I was taken on to basically draw out a mini empire that consisted of one for-profit corporation, Millennium Mind, and probably 10 or 15 non-profit corporations underneath that. That was the proposal that was on the table that had me basically there for 6 months, during which time she hoped to brainwash and condition me, like she has presumably Williams, Coffin, Cole, and God knows how many others. On the screen now, the enormous, well-intended proposal, accompanied by infinite promises that I was working on for 6 months in the first part of 2002. None of these proposals are ever meant to come to fruition. They're just, if you like, a placeholder where the victim sits while she works on the victim. She goes on, the primary reason I considered a lawsuit is that 2 years after I had resigned, they had somehow managed to procure something like 4 to 5 credit cards in my name and had forged my signature to do it and had racked up bills and then not paid them. So I was not real happy about that having happened. I was told that they planned to repay them before I found out, and therefore somehow they rationalized it. Again, I'm totally shocked by the degree of lying that this woman just spews out. What she just described was the mirror image of exactly what happened. Patton West ran up those debts. Patton West had the credit cards. I know she was given one of them by Corin Coffin, which was topped up regularly, being topped up by a Brazilian during times when there were capital currency controls. Apparently the money was passed through an intermediary in New York, so I was told. And let's not forget that Patton West inferred she resigned around 2002 period and kept sending in resignation letters that were not responded to. Utter lies. Her service in her front companies, whatever they're calling themselves, continued right up until recently. Certainly Williams and Coffin resigned in 2021 after she defrauded the US government out of $150,000. Continuing on in little page 19, lawyers says, so there's credit cards out there in your name with a bunch of debt on it. Well, from what I understand, in the document that I received from Patricia Cole, who filed bankruptcy, she included all the non-profit debt that she thought would in any way touch the hem of her veil in there. So I saw some of that on her bankruptcy declaration papers. Well, from what she understands, everything she's just said is a complete and utter fabrication. Let us remind us who Dr. Cole was. This was a long-term brainwashed and conditioned droid who had a little bit of wealth. So she jumped onto one of Patton West's Save the World big schemes. And as I pointed out earlier, she agreed to pay 66% of her net worth to accompany Patton West 100 miles north from Victor, Montana to Lakeside, Montana. As pointed out, Patton West got tired of waiting for Cole to hand over her entire net worth and started to beat the crap out of her to speed up the handover of the money. When everybody is appalled at what Patton West does, she goes to the masters in her head, who understandably, because they're in her head, tell her that Cole was deserving of the beating because she was a Nazi in the World War II death camps in another lifetime. Top of little page 20. Have you run a credit report in your own name? The lawyer asks. Patton West says no. Do you know if there's any other credit card debt out there in your name? Well, yes, I'm deeply in debt. I couldn't tell you the exact amount, blah, blah, blah. Again, if you review the statements from her ex-employees and students, you'll find that she spends money like water. She has some of her staff pay for her dry cleaning bills, etc., etc. To be clear, it was Patton West running up those debts on those credit cards. It was not her employees or her students. So FBI, maybe you're beginning to get your head around just how evil this woman is and why she's been allowed to get away with it for nearly 35 years. She goes on. I couldn't tell you the exact amount, but that's because, again, Mr. Reynolds handles all that for me. Do you see what she just did then? I've given two examples where she's blamed her managers, for her actions, basically, her crimes. And she keeps lining Mr. Reynolds up as the person dealing with all the money because she knows when she ends up in a criminal trial the money laundering, all of that will be ramped onto attempted murder, terrorism, and racketeering. Bottom of little page 20, the lawyer says, are you willing to provide that to your attorney to provide to me? Sure, no problem. It's just not something that I personally I didn't oversee any of that, whatever. Lies, lies, lies. What this evil, spiteful, murdering psychopath wants you to believe is that she's a dumb housewife kind of, I don't know, some of the man deals with the money, not me. And what she's doing is blaming all the crimes onto her minions in the cult. Many of them who have never had problems with the police or with court. But up on the screen now, just as a reminder, is Patton West pedigree, going all the way back to the 70s, followed by a tiny, tiny percentage of the crimes she has committed. And the cult members beneath her, Williams, Reynolds, Jack West, of course, and Corin Coffin, they knew exactly what was going on. They're accomplices. Yeah, funding, marketing, lying for, threatening for. This isn't a religious order. It's a criminal gang. Let's leave the last words to Miss Patton West herself, the mother of 10,000 sons, the region of the Western Hemisphere, blah, 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 blah.
It doesn't matter what is actually true.
Because I've watched you treat other people, sometimes in a very, very bad way. You dispose of them like Kleenex.
That's right.
You treat them
Absolutely.
terribly.
I've disposed of a lot of people of late. It's that all you want is your money.
I want to be paid for the
And that's-
time that I work. That's it. That's the
You
end.
just want to be paid.
That's it. That's
Even
it.
though there was no agreement, nothing in writing, nothing.
Oh, there were agreements, Deborah, between you and I, but they turned out not to be worth anything.
That's right. They turned out not to be
That's
worth
right.
anything at all.
That is the truth. You are fucking over a spiritual teacher, for Christ's sake.
So moving on, big page 7, little page 22, top left. Did you file taxes for 2008? I don't know. I don't think so. Who would know? Mr. Reynolds. There we are, Mr. Reynolds again. Do you know why you wouldn't have filed taxes in 2000? I'm not sure. Didn't get around to it. I'm not sure why he wouldn't have gone forward with that, he being Reynolds. I mean, I've been under extreme financial hardship and duress. I would imagine that is why he may not have filed it yet. Strange. Only 2 years before that, in 2007 July, she was a billionaire. Now she's under extreme financial duress. Further down, did you know what your income was for 2007? She says, no, I didn't. Besides the credit card debt, do you have any other debts? Asked the lawyer. Yes, there is close to $1 million to Nakashala, the property in Victor, that foreclosure. The property address was 736 Fredburr Road. It's an Indian name, Nakashala. I've seen it somewhere, but I couldn't even attempt to spell it. Another massive, massive lie. She was the one who probably chose the name for it. And again, this act of hers to make her sound like an old, confused idiot doesn't wash. This was the person that was supposedly on the lecture circuit. This was the person who Carl Ida overheard saying, I don't care if I kill Dr. Cole. As an enlightened being, I'll be as happy in a 6x6 cell as I would in a $6 million mansion. I've seen her live in lots of mansions, but so far not a 6x6 jail cell, but we'll fix that. Lawyer goes on, any other debt? Patton West says, I owe Mr. Reynolds money. I owe my son Rob money. I'm not really apprised of each and every vendor or supplier to whom I owe money, but a variety of vendors and suppliers and credit cards, over $1 million in debt. And do you know how much you are indebted to Mr. Reynolds? I'm guessing in the neighborhood of $600,000 to $700,000. And how about your son, Rob? Several hundred thousand. Moving up, top right, little page 24, Patton West says, I estimate that it was about $2 million in all that I'm in debt. You know, not counting the award with Mr. Watson, should the appeal go in his favour. Do you have any loans from anyone? Pardon? Do you have any loans? Have you taken any loans either from an institution? Well, I owe Mr. Reynolds and my son, other than Mr. Reynolds or your son. You see, she's playing this dumb, old, confused woman thing. It's all a game to Patton West, or she's criminally insane. That's for the courts to decide. Up on the screen now are some photographs of Patton West in the garb she wears for her day job, which is racketeering, terrorism, and several murders, we understand. Now, when she goes into court, she looks completely different. She even wears glasses to disguise her face a little. Not that it works, of course. And this show she puts on whenever she appears in court, where she plays dumb. I don't know, I'm an old woman, I'm confused, I can't remember. It's Reynolds' fault, he did it, they did it, they're looking after me, blah, blah, blah. Now, on the screen now are one of the flyers she had made for herself for Millennia Mind, after I was constructively dismissed, of course, which basically paints her as a genius. Now, I could come up with a dozen of these where she's portrayed as a genius, and now she can't remember what day it is or when she filed her taxes. It's all an act, but she's so good at it, she's got away with it for over 3 decades, which is why I'm going into so much detail, so that when the FBI and law enforcement et al. Get this information, they'll know exactly what they're dealing with. But hey, what the hell do I know? She may be able to hold open the gates of time for all I know, and she may well be a genius. After all, the Christ gave her 2 doctorates in person. That's got to count for something, hasn't it? Further down the page, we're looking at little page 25, bottom right. Counsel says, you never borrowed 30,000 from your father? She answers, borrowed from my father? No. Other than the judgment in this case, are there any other judgments pending against you? No, not that I can think of. Are there any other legal proceedings against you other than this case and potentially Wells Fargo? I'm not sure what the status of regarding 525 Political Hill. Well, the big lie in there is that Patton West did borrow 30,000 from her father. Here is a recording from Carol Patton. That would be Patton West's stepmother.
Things I was just stated to him that, John gave her money supposedly to buy land, and it was our understanding that she was going to pay it back, and which obviously she's not going to do it, so it kind of leaves me. I mean, for whatever reason, she's done it, and it's not going to help me.
I'll leave the viewers and the courts to decide whether Patton West's actions towards her stepmother were conscious fiscal mastery or just the divine embrace from somebody on the royal path.
That all you want is your money.
I want to be paid for the
And that's-
time that I worked. That's it. That's the
You
end.
just want to be paid.
That's it. That's
Even
it.
though there was no agreement, nothing in writing, nothing.
Oh, there were agreements, Deborah, between you and I, but they turned out not to be worth anything.
That's right. They turned out not to be
That's
worth
right.
anything at all.
Now, I have a history of doing what I say and keeping my word. And I have a history of acting from integrity.
Do you really feel that it's worth it to you to invest in a court battle no matter what it's going to cost? Because it's going to cost far more than $50,000 that you're even asking.
So you just heard Patton West state her business model there. And that is, she sucks in people like me, consultants say, and basically defrauds them, admits that she's defrauded them, then challenges them to go to court and spend more money than they would get if she paid the $50,000 she owed in my case. And then when the victim goes to court, the first thing that happens is she and senior members of her cult start to defame the victim, to paint them as being the one that is a criminal, not herself. And if that fails to deter the victim, then she uses her occult hidden weapon, aka her terrorist weapon, to intimidate and coerce the victims into either emptying their bank accounts into hers or to go away without recompense or justice with their tail between their legs, which is what 95% of her victims do. In my case, because I went public in a big way and put up a website, I was slated for murder. First of all, idiot Williams sends me a threatening email. And then Reynolds announces my murder. And quite by coincidence, eventually Dr. Cole was threatened with murder because she wasn't handing over the 66% of her net worth fast enough for Patton West. Does this look like a world server, or does this look like the head of a criminal gang organizing the members of her gang to work against the victim she's robbed, defrauded, extorted, embezzled from, etc., etc.? We can see this model working over and over again. Dr. Cole. In my case, I was brought on to set up a number of corporations, a for-profit corporation, Millennium Mind, sitting at the head of multiple non-profit corporations. I worked diligently on this for 6 months with the promise of pay and shares, and at the end of it, I was just summarily dismissed. And it did not matter how much evidence there was that Patton West was lying. She just assumed she would get away with this crime because she'd gotten away with similar crimes over and over again over the past 3+ decades. It wasn't that I hadn't done what she asked. I had. It's that was never meant to come into fruition. That was just a hamster wheel I was set on for 6 months in the hope that she could brainwash and condition me and turn me into another one of her droids, like Dr. Cole, Dr. Williams, Corin Coffin, and all the other zealots that actually think she's doing something good for humanity. So let's now move on to the next victim, which is top to bottom construction. So big page 8, little page 26, top left. Basically, it's a carbon copy of what she's done to so many other people. This time it's outside tradesmen as opposed to consultants, employees, or students, or people who think that they can pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for a cure from her. In a nutshell, they agree a price on a job, the person does the job, then they make up all sorts of complaints as to why they don't have to pay. And if the poor victim decides to take them to court, as Top to Bottom Construction did, then like me and countless other victims, they'll probably be subject to a campaign of occult violence, aka terrorism, her weapon of choice. I would add that Chris Haywood has a criminal record, like mother, like son. In his respect, it's for forgery, FBI with forgery, Santa Fe, New Mexico, Montana, criminal possession of dangerous drugs, like mother, like son. Department of Motor Vehicles, issued and convicted, 98, 99, Douglas County statement of warrantless arrest. Chris Haywood allegedly defrauded an insurance company after a car he was being driven in by one of his mother's employees, as I understand it, was involved in a minor accident. Chris Haywood made a claim against the insurance company for damages. However, at the time he was supposed to be disabled, he was seen wakeboarding up and down the lake and mowing the lawn. Yes, and apparently, if I've got this right, because he was allegedly disabled, his first ex-wife and mother of his first daughter was paying him $400 a month. Have I said this is a crime family? The other crimes involving Chris Haywood and his mother that are worthy of mention is that Chris Haywood has got divorced from 2 young wives. Each of those young wives bore him a young infant daughter. At the breakdown of the marriage, or after the breakdown of the marriage, in both cases there were child custody hearings. Both parents wanted the child. In both cases, Patton West launched a campaign of terrorism against each young mother in an attempt to either dissuade them from applying for custody of their daughter or to basically have them questioning their own sanity as they get sudden headaches, pains they shouldn't have them, can't sleep, and etc., etc., etc. That tactic worked on the first young mother, Kendall Haywood. It didn't work on the second young mother, Jamie Haywood. I urge you to go to our website and go down to the transcript of the child custody hearing with Jamie Haywood and Chris Haywood and read about their sordid home life, and then try to match what Patton West says on our website with reality at home. Have I said that this is a crime family? Okay, big page 8, little page 27, bottom left. Do you have any bank accounts? She answers, no, I don't. You don't bank anywhere in Montana? No, I don't, or elsewhere. That was my next question. Do you have authority to sign on anybody else's bank account? No, I don't. When is the last time you had a bank account? My last personal account that I had was closed in June. Again, there's some truth in what she's saying, but a lot of lies as well. Of course she has bank accounts, but probably not in the States. Probably Israel offshore accounts. But what she does is she sucks up money. If you remember the pyramid, she sucks it up from below, and she either offshores it, buys precious metals with it and stores it, or buys jewels with it and hides them somewhere, and lots of artwork and valuables. Most of the artwork and valuables she stole from the charity were bought by money donated to the charity for the charity. But as you've realised by now, Patton West was the charity, hence the Rishi collection. Up on the screen now are images of some of the artwork she stole from the charity. That would be in around 2004 when it was valued at $4 million. That artwork ended up in a lockup for 10 years. And once she moved down to Arizona from Montana in 2010, it all moved down with her. And some of it was up on the web for sale and some of it went to auction. And last but not least, she was accused of stealing artwork from a local artist in Phoenix, I understand.
It doesn't matter what is actually true. Because I feel stabbed in the back by you, John. I feel literally stabbed in the heart, stabbed in the back. I feel fucked up the ass. I feel so fucked over by you.
Listen,
I'm not going to take this laying down. If you want to sue, let's go so fucking down and dirty. Huge expenses, John. And it isn't going to come out of my pocket. It will come out of yours.
This particular episode, part 10, is now around 15 minutes, so I'm going to end it here. But I suspect, looking at the amount of material I've got, this is going to go to probably 20 parts.